Hello, friends. So happy to have you here with me today at Radical Joy. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time with us, we're glad you're here. Each Wednesday, I'm here with you talking to myself about things that weigh on my mind and heart, hoping if you're dealing with something similar, we can adjust both our perspectives as you listen. The more people I meet and the more places I go, the more I realize how important it is to make people aware of the fact that there is no shame in enjoying the parts of your life that are incredible. It's time for some radical joy, and this week, the three fingers pointing back at me are for the small things. Now, if you're listening to this, there's a very good chance that perhaps you know me in real life. If you don't know me in real life, but you've just been listening to the podcast, number one, thank you. It's so nice to have you here. And number two, I just want to let you in on a little secret. I keep it very well hidden. I know this is going to surprise you. I tend to lean toward the dramatic. Not necessarily in a way of making mountains out of molehills, but in the fact that I love grand gestures. I love large everything. Nothing I do is subdued or subtle. I often say to people that I put the B in subtle. And the more I learn about life in general, the more I realize that, yes, sometimes that is absolutely wonderful. There is something fantastic to have someone make a big deal over you, special occasion, a birthday, an anniversary, a celebration of sorts. It is so nice to some to be celebrated in an epic manner. Whenever I was working at restaurants in New York City, I would sing the happy birthday song, and between each verse, I would cha cha cha, or I would scream in falsetto, "It's your birthday, yeah." And for some people, that is the height of embarrassment. They've been brought to a relatively fine dining establishment, and here comes this crazy waiter with big blonde hair and a whole lot of birthday lungs. Okay, great. I'm here today to sing a different song. I want to sing the praises of the little things. What I'd like to do is make sure that I give credit and honor to those things that whisper instead of echo, to the demonstrations that aren't demonstrative. Those subtle, tiny, small things that make footprints on your heart that were made more by an elf than a giant. There is power in knowing when to play your cards quietly and when to play them with a flourish. And today I want to talk about the quiet parts. Spoke with a very good friend of mine this morning. He calls me, the phone rings, and I'll be honest, it was meant to be. And the reason I know this is because I almost always keep my phone on Do Not Disturb. Last night, before going to bed, for the first time in for as long as I can remember, I did not put it on mute. I did not put it on Do Not Disturb. And this morning, the phone rings, wakes me from a sound slumber. And this is someone I don't hear from very frequently. And I pick up the phone, and this person says, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you. You keep a positive perspective on so much in your life, and I think that's what I need. I need some positivity, maybe some advice, etc." And I'll be honest, folks, if you wake me from a sound sleep, it's going to take me just a second to shake off the rust and the cobwebs to kind of get going. Okay. Now, after a cup of coffee, yeah, we're all cylinders firing. But until then, especially if I'm woken from a sound sleep where, my hair is akimbo and my spittle is still drying on the pillowcase, well, we might need a little moment. But he tells me these things and he says, "This is the situation." And he describes to me what it is he's dealing with. And I know this person very well. And it's wonderful because I think he and I get along because, namaste, the actor in me sees the actor in you. The large personality in me sees and respects the large personality in you. Game recognizes game. And he started to talk to me about the things, and I know this man. He is romantic. He is verbose. His vocabulary is absolutely stunning. He is charming. He is attractive. He is all of these things, and it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that he has gone back to his playbook because of all of these things he knows he has going for him, that he has gone back to this playbook to try the same methods to get himself out of trouble that he has used in innumerable instances in the past. And where before it has always been successful, this time it actually worked directly the opposite. His partner asked him for space and peace and quiet. And instead of listening to what she had requested and what she very specifically asked of him, he went back to his playbook. And I have no doubt that all of the things he pulled out were coming from a very sincere place. He was definitely very apologetic, feeling these things. And he was not coming from a place of her need, but for his desire. Okay. Without giving too much more away of their story, because I don't want to betray his trust, I just want to say that it's so important to know that large is not always the most effective or strongest method of getting what it is that you hope to receive. Meaning, sometimes it is the quiet, it is the stillness that shows the most strength, the most confidence. And it's so important to reside there. Even if that's not your normal MO, it's crucial that you know how to use that. Okay? And when I say use, I mean as a tool, not as a weapon. It is very much something that you need to have at your disposal because I love big. I love grand and sweeping and romantic and adventurous and yes, and we'll figure out the details later. And there is a time for, I will wait. Perhaps I should not move on this immediately. There are other forces at play. Perhaps listening and watching and careful observation are my best methods for finding an effective way forward. The tiny things can be so strong and so powerful. It's amazing to me. Whenever you think about this, there are so many examples of this. Like if you think about the Grand Canyon in relation to the size of the river running through it, it's infinitesimally small, the river, in comparison to the canyon. Yet, when given a long enough timeline, it absolutely etches the canyon into the earth. An ant can lift however many times its size. I want to say 100. Small things to move great distances. It's so important to remind myself this is one of those things where maybe I'm speaking more to me and people who have similar personalities in this respect this week than I am to perhaps the community at large. Because I think that being so big is not necessarily everyone's method. And part of me is really grateful for that because I think that being large and being able to be so outgoing and outspoken is a very specific character trait and some might say talent or skill. So is listening to the tiny parts of the world. The arguments, the discussions, the tells in relationships, and not just romantic, but also in friendships, in colleagues, and things like that. Whenever you can tell that something has changed color, that the temperature of the room has differed, what then? Do you try to dismiss it? Do you try to gaslight it? Do you try to make it go away as quickly as possible because conflict resolution is not your favorite thing? That's me, hand in the air. I volunteer that. It's like, yeah, that's me, 100%. And something I've realized that is very valuable, a skill that needs to be learned at every level in our society, is conflict resolution. So many of these relationships are so incredibly important. They're so important. And I think that a lot of our relationships have become somewhat disposable, where we can either go to our regular playbook take a page out of that, apply it. If it doesn't work, well, clearly this wasn't meant to be. Next. Okay. Sometimes that is the case. Honestly, it will sometimes be that way. And there are other times where you need to make sure that you take a very close look at what it is you're dealing with and with whom, and figure out if your normal mode of repair is what's going to work in this instance. It's so crazy to me to think that the people that I get along with best are usually people who are the most similar to me. Well, James, that really doesn't seem that far-fetched. No, just bear with me. The way that I am a lot of times with people is if things get really hairy, if things get really inconvenient, it can be very easy for me to distance myself from someone. Even whenever I know this person challenges me in a very good way, they move me closer to the human being that I want to be. And the things that I write in my journal and the things that I ask for whenever I'm praying or talking to God or however you want to put it, when I request those things, they don't just happen. There is a process, there is a growth that must occur, there is a challenge that must be met in order for me to receive a lot of this. Not every time, but I think many times. And when the normal doesn't work, that humor, that charm, that, hey, how are you doing? That writing poetry or saying pretty things, because we can be very good at that. When those things don't work because the person we're offering them to knows us and knows exactly what it is we're doing when we resort to said, congratulations, you've been seen completely, thoroughly, all the way through. And that person is not necessarily going to meet you where you expect them to meet you, where you've always expected them to meet you. And you'll have to try something new. And it'll be outside your comfort zone. For me, it would be the quiet. It would be the tiny. It would be the small stuff. No, I don't want you to tell me how important I am to you. I want you to show me and stop with the pretty words and stop with the apologies. And I want you to really listen to what it is that I'm telling you. Don't embellish. Don't add. Don't augment. If anything is unclear, please ask. Oh, well, and the best part about all that is if you really listen to this person who's talking to you and they are truly telling you what they expect you to deliver in order for this thing to improve. And they're telling you the truth and not just what they think you want them to tell you. I truly believe that that A is going to be easier than what you may have wanted to try. It's really interesting whenever you have to work with something that almost always works. Like if you know your audience, you've got a very specific trick bag, okay? Y'all know what I'm talking about. If you know the person with whom you're dealing, you will offer A, B, and C, and usually one of those things or a combination of 2 or 3 of those things will achieve desired outcome. When they don't, what do we do then? We listen. We ask questions. We clarify. Not facetiously. We ask questions in order to understand. That seems very obvious that I would say something like that, but I want to make sure that I'm very clear on that. Have you asked a question trying to trap someone in an answer where it makes you seem more right and their request seem more unreasonable? Yeah, me too. Great. Instead of trying to do that, instead of trying to bend or coerce, manipulate someone with the questions that you're asking so that you can just resort to your same old, your everyday playbook that you know like the back of your hand that requires no effort on your part and requires all the compromise on the part of your partner, colleague, friend. How about we look to make this easier for them. Is that okay? Can I just request that of you? Of me? Instead of thinking them unreasonable, instead of trying to find a way to go back to what it is. I think I'm always right. I will absolutely admit that to you. I like being right. I hate being less than right. We don't even use that W word around here. Mm-mm-mm-mm. And a few episodes ago, I remember mentioning to all of you that I wanted to be better at being wrong. Very good friend of mine said that, and it's a point of pride on his part, and I think that's why he is so successful in so many areas of his life. He says, I am really good at being wrong. And I've seen him. I've seen it when he processes that being wrong part, because I know that I have spoken to him a couple of times about things that I think were just behaviors learned early that were never really brought to the surface again until a very specific instance comes up. Just anecdotal experience. So I'm dealing with concretes here with you while I'm talking to you instead of just these vague. A young man came into the gym where we're all working out, and he has a stuffed animal. And this kid's like 6, 8 years old, etc. And this very good friend of mine, an amazing human being, says to this young man something to the effect of, you got to get rid of that stuffed animal. And he says, little boys don't play with stuffed animals or something like that. Please excuse me, I am paraphrasing tremendously. And I didn't say anything at the time because I didn't think it appropriate to call him out in front of everyone. That's not my thing, especially for this person. It's a very important person in my life. The next time I was terrified, but I thought it was very important. I told him, I said, look, I said, if there's anything that a young man needs to know in this life, especially as young as he is and being raised by parents, I know that are teaching him to be loving and caring and nurturing and wonderful. Loving a stuffed animal does not make him any less of a boy, okay? He loves that animal. He takes care of that animal. His mother told me how well he tends to his stuffed animals, that they stay on his bed unless they're, walking around with him. Also, I said, you need to understand you're an example of manhood to this young man. And whenever you say something like that, he looks up to you. He looks way up to you. And you need to know that whenever you say something like that, it makes a tremendous impact on him. And I will not let that stand. I love you. I respect you. This is not okay. And he looked at me and he blinked. And he nodded his head, and that was the end of it. There was no discussion. There was no argument. There was no debate. A couple of days later, he comes to me and he says, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I was like, oh gosh, here it comes. Man, I like this guy so much. This is really one of my favorite people in the world. It's going to hurt really bad whenever this ends because I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. And he says to me, he's like, and you're right. He says, what I said to him was something that I learned a long time ago from someone who wasn't thinking. And he says, and we are at a shortage of men knowing how to express affection and love for one another in a healthy manner. And it translates to partners and wives and families. And he says, and you were right, and I will do better. Oh my gosh. Okay. That is the kind of good at being wrong I want to be. Because if I resort to my normal playbook, if I go back to the things and I try to literally put every square peg that comes in my life as an obstacle into that round hole of my same old, deal with it in this way, X, Y, Z. If it doesn't work, kick it to the curb. What does that mean? What does that look like? Especially if someone cares enough about the relationship to tell me specifically to my face in very brief, succinct methods how to handle what it is they're feeling to help them deal with it. Dude, they've given me the keys to the kingdom. It's literally just sitting right there in front of me. Be quiet. Give me my space. Don't abandon me but make sure that you're not up in my business. Don't be under my armpit. Don't be in my hair. Be near, be present, and be quiet. That's the thing. It's so simple whenever we have a partner who cares enough about the situation to give us the realities of it. This is what I feel. This is what I'm going through. And I need you to meet me there. Not as this that you're used to doing, but as what I'm asking you. I am entreating you to do these things for me. I don't want to be part of your audience. I want to be your partner. Okay. Okay. And I think that whenever we get caught up in grand gestures and broad this and sweeping that and, giant bouquets and serenades from a balcony, etc. Yes, of course, those are so lovely and they belong in movies and storybooks, 100%. In real life, those are wonderful for a sprinkle here and there. Those are absolutely fantastic to come, driving down the street, with your head out the sunroof of your limousine, brandishing your umbrella like a sword. Get after it. Have your Richard Gere pretty woman moment. Yes. Those are special occasions. Those are linen napkins and the genuine silverware. Those are the fine china. That's the tablecloth and the candelabra. Okay. It's these tiny things, these small things that are just grabbing a stick of string cheese out of the fridge and you split it with your partner. They're breaking that popsicle that has 2 sticks in half and giving the other half to your partner and just grinning about it, and then both of you going back to whatever it is you were doing before. It's not making a big deal of it. It's literally that tiny, tiny thing. It's all lowercase. It's barely punctuated. It's, "I'm thinking of you." It's, "You are important to me." It's filling her gas tank. It's sharpening all of her pencils before she sits down at her desk. It's making sure he's got his favorite oat milk in the fridge. There's so many of these things are so teeny, teeny, tiny, and I wish I could tell you the magnification that happens to these small gestures when they go through the lens of listening. It's not huge. It's not difficult. What it is being attentive and just being willing to set aside your own ego and wishes to do the grand thing that makes the big gesture to show someone you are listening, you're watching, and you know what their favorite thing is. And it may not be you. Newsflash. That's the best part of this, especially if you're in a little bit of a tiff. You may not be their favorite person. And that's just something you're going to have to deal with until maybe you are their favorite person again. Or maybe you're not. What you are is the person they continue to choose. And that's pretty great too. In order to do these things, you're going to need to be super careful. It can get away from you because doing these small things is so tough because it just feels like nothing. It feels like nothing. No. And here's the part that always just cracks me up is that people who love to do grand gestures like myself, whenever something tiny is requested of them, I will often I'll absolutely shit on it. Excuse my language, but that's just, I don't know of a better way to say it. I don't know of a more effective way to say it. If it doesn't fit my idea of what they should be getting from me, well, by God, they're just not going to get anything. Not that I want to, have that air or spirit of malice in it, of course. It's just one of those things. It's just like if all they want from me is for me to give them some space, well, fine, I'll give them some space. I just won't come back for 3 days. No, no. Space, not absence. Or all I want from you is a simple dinner at home, television off, and whenever we finish, I want some quiet time on the sofa to read. Perfect. And then you come in with a rotisserie chicken and a few sides from the grocery store deli, the television off, the telephones are over in the living room while you're in the dining room. And once that finishes, you leave her maybe with a glass of wine or a cup of hot tea on the table while she curls up on the sofa with the book or the Netflix series she's been wanting to watch, and you just relocate, put yourself somewhere else. Great. So simple, so easy. This is not advice. This is one of those things where I'm just like, I'm speaking to me because I like doing big, big, big moves. And sometimes the biggest move you can do is by going outside your comfort zone, going outside your perceived personality to deliver what it is this person is asking of you. Because the chances are it's not just the gesture, but the size of it, because they're challenging you to operate on a different level, on a smaller scale. Are you capable? Of course you're capable. Is your ego going to get in the way to make it seem as though you are incapable of delivering this? What? I got it. It's not just the thing. It's putting yourself in a place that shows that you are willing to do different, to be different for this person in this situation in order to make sure they know that you care enough to put in the effort. Tiny, infinitesimally, small, minutia, nothing. And yet, humans are so endlessly fascinating. It's one of those things where some people ask for the moon and their partner absolutely slaves away, kills themselves trying to deliver. And others who literally ask for a matchbook from their favorite restaurant because they know that you're in this city where this restaurant resides on business. When you go, please have this for me and bring me back a matchbook. So easy. So easy. This isn't golden apples. This isn't killing me and lion. This is a matchbook and an appetizer. And it still shocks me to think how difficult it is for some people to come across with that. Myself included. When I say some people, it's me. It's absolutely me. So here's the thing. Tiny can be so big. It depends on who's looking at it. What appears one way to you can be a totally different proportion to another human being who just needs that. They care enough about you to ask for it specifically. And I love it. Oh, it's wonderful. It's absolutely incredible whenever someone can care about you enough to ask themselves the hard questions so they can come up with the answer to deliver to you, so then you can deliver their needs so that you can move forward in whatever this relationship is to you. I'm so grateful for the friends in my life. They continue to challenge me and encourage me to be a better listener. And I want to be that for them. People, honest to goodness, maybe it's my friends. If so, I feel very fortunate. They're very intelligent, emotionally and otherwise. They're very intelligent people. I find that if I just sit and listen, if I just take it all in while they're talking, don't try to interrupt, don't try to advise, don't try to guide or any of that stuff. I just listen actively. And I hate I hate it when it's like, No. They know I'm listening. I don't need to verbalize any of that mess. Just sit there, listen attentively, actively. You can find them and the answers they've already figured out in how they tell the story. Again, small. You have to be listening. You got to be watching. You got to be fully invested. And they'll tell you. I spoke with 3 people today. It was very similar in that I feel very fortunate that people feel comfortable enough to reach out to me on the weekend and say, hey, let's have a chat. I want to talk to you about these kind of things that are weighing heavily on me. I was like, sure, let's do it. And we talk. And they say these things, and there will be things in the conversation. Sometimes I have to keep a pen and paper close because they'll say it and I'll write it down because I don't want to interrupt, but I also don't want to forget. I don't want to focus so much on remembering that I don't hear the rest of their story. Okay. And then whenever they reach a stopping point or they reach one of those points where they look to me for a reaction or a response, I'm like, okay, the most real thing I heard today was this. What this person is trying to tell you from what the story you've relayed to me is this. And I could be wrong. I don't think I am. What they're asking seems very reasonable. Their responses to your normal playbook were harsh. And at first, I was ready to take your side. And now, after listening to this, I'm thinking that maybe you have tried to manipulate the situation a few times or in the past. Pardon me, in the past. And they saw it coming because it is pretty easy to see. It gets very shiny, it gets very loud, it gets very earnest. And they tell you because they love you, please don't talk to me that way. I see where this is going, and that's not where I expect this to be. This is not what's going to help us move forward. This is not what's going to help me be less upset with you. What will help me is A, B, C, D. And you know what you do then? You do your dead level best to deliver A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, a mixture of some, all. And then even if it still doesn't work out, you did what was asked of you. You heard what was requested. You did your dead level best to clarify and deliver. And still, if it ends, you can be satisfied in knowing that you did what was asked to the best of your ability. It was not in your wheelhouse. It was actually probably very difficult, even though it was probably a lot less effort. It's just not what you're used to doing. And it's not what you see to be your personality type's response to something like that. Congratulations, that's growth. Growth should hurt. It should hurt. It should hurt. What you're doing is outgrowing things. If I were to try to wear the same clothes I wore whenever I was 6 years old, if I tried to squeeze this gigantic rear end and all of this other into a pair of trousers or a t-shirt that I wore when I was 6 years old, it would hurt. Okay? It would probably rip the pants. It would definitely rip the shirt. It would just be a mess. It would be counterproductive. It would be silly to think that that would still fit. When we learn and grow and move forward and progress, we should probably think of our persons in the same manner. Growth hurts. We are becoming larger than the vessel we inhabit. We're like a lizard. We're like a snake. We're like a crab. If your shell gets too tight, if your skin gets too tight, it's going to split. And then eventually you're going to have to shuffle it off. And the skin, the new skin underneath is very sensitive. It's raw. It's going to take a little while for that sensitivity to kind of cool off a little bit. Okay. And first, it's going to hurt. We should expect that. We absolutely should expect that. I think that's probably why people who deal with more trauma than others are the ones who are so willing and probably better prepared to make those kinds of changes if that's the path they choose. Trauma can be really rough on people. That's why they call it trauma. Hi, Captain Obvious, yet again. It can also be an enormous impetus, a motivator to make sure that those kinds of things never happen to you again. Or if they do, that you go in there with a much stronger, broader knowledge base so that when it does happen, and it's a good chance that it probably will, you're better prepared and it'll hurt. You will not be unfamiliar. So Tiny things. Pay attention to those. They're important. They're crucial. We don't think about those as often because they're not as easily seen. They're not as flashy. They're not as fancy. They're not as Insta worthy. It doesn't make them any less important. If anything, it's more telling if you're willing to do the quiet things because so few others will know. The person who will is the one who requested it, and they're the ones who deserve it in the first place. And I love it. I love it. It takes a huge amount of pressure off me. All it asks is that instead of doing my normal, I do as requested and grow in the process. It amazes me how quickly these half hours fly by. As always, thank you so much for joining us here on Radical Joy. It's a pleasure to have you here. If this is your first visit, welcome. We're so happy to have you. I hope that something that we shared today got you thinking, got you feeling, brought something to the surface that you can either work with or try to work to improve. If you have been here before, welcome back. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for thinking enough of this time we get to spend together to revisit. It's always so great to have you. If you're the person who likes to leave reviews, I am. If you are, great. We ask that on whatever platform you're listening that you leave us a review for Radical Joy. I can't tell you how helpful it is to receive 5-star reviews from our listeners that enjoy and or get something out of this time we get to spend together. And hey, leave us a 5-star review, take a screenshot of it and send it to us, and I'll be happy to send you a sticker with my face on it and the Radical Joy emblem. It's perfect for putting on a water bottle or a journal or wherever it is you like to put your stickers. We're always so grateful to our listeners. We are so happy to be here. We're nearing our 1-year anniversary, and it is crazy to me to think that we've been doing this for a year, and I couldn't have done it without y'all. Thank you so much for listening. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. I hope that whatever we got to talk about today, that it touched your heart and moved you to think about things in a slightly different way. Love y'all. The bottom line is, use your words, friends. Thank you for joining us again in this moment of radical joy. If this is your first time, we're so happy you're here. Take a moment to check out our archive. See if there's something else that fires you up, rekindles the joy in you. And hey, spread the word if you enjoyed it. We welcome reviews and messages. Let me know what you want to talk about. I rarely run out of things to say. So if there's something on your mind or heart, I want to hear from you. Don't forget, there is no shame in joy. I am not a therapist or a medical professional. If you're experiencing a mental health emergency, please call 911. This content and other content produced by CLW Studios and affiliated partners is not therapy, and nothing in this content indicates a therapeutic relationship. Any opinions of guests on this podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of James or CLW Studios. Please consult with your therapist or seek one in your area if you're experiencing mental health symptoms. Anything in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Learn more about James and CLW Studios. Follow the link in the show notes. Don't forget to leave a review, and hey, we'll send you a sticker. Just send a screenshot and let us know where you want it sent. Have a great week, and we will see you next Wednesday for another dose of Radical Joy. Love y'all.